My name is Stephanie Getz.
What do you do here?
So I am a pilot that flies this beautiful airplane, the L-39 Albatross. It's a military jet trainer that helps train pilots to become fighter pilots.
What made you become a pilot?
Oh man, I became a pilot after I got introduced to it by someone who wanted me to do a story on aviation. I used to be a news anchor and reporter, and I got to fly the airplane. And when I pulled back the controls for the first time to lift off, I thought, where has this been all my life? It is absolutely incredible. I absolutely love it, and I fell in love with it.
How fast does the plane go?
The plane can go more than 400 knots, which is maybe 415, 430 or more miles per hour, so very fast. And actually, this plane used to be a race plane, so it raced in the Reno Air Races, won some of the races that it raced in, and that's a very fast plane to be able to do that.
Do you fly upside down or do flips?
Yeah, so aerobatics, absolutely. We go inverted, but you can only do it for about 20 seconds because of the fuel in the airplane. So you flip over, and then you go back down, and you flip over again. So we go inverted, we do rolls, we do loops, we do everything you possibly can safely with the airplane. Now, he asked about G-forces, and this airplane goes from +9 to -3 Gs. So it can pull some of the Gs that some of the air show aircraft do, some of those other military jets. It's you got to definitely know what you're doing to pull those kind of Gs.
What does it feel like doing flips?
Oh, it's the most exhilarating feeling flying this plane, especially. So with this plane, because it's so responsive on the yoke, which is the control force of the plane, because it's so responsive and so quick, it feels like you're just wearing the plane. And so they say, wear the jet. And so when you want to turn left and just barely make a movement, it will. When you're doing flips and rolls and all that sort of thing, sometimes you're weightless. So you get to flip all the way over and you're upside down, just kind of hanging in the harness that you're in, which is the parachute. Or it feels like you're completely weightless, which really is one of the most amazing feelings in the world. And it's fun to feel like you're going really fast, too.
How do you train to be a pilot?
In this aircraft, you have to have 1,000 hours of just flight time in general to even be qualified to get checked out in the airplane and to get a check ride in the airplane. So you have to have relative good amount of experience to fly the plane. But then after that, you fly with an instructor who sits in the back seat, and you sit in the front seat. And then you do all kinds of training. You do simulated engine failures to figure out what you would do in case of that kind of severe emergency. And all kinds of other emergencies and situations like no flaps and other things as well. So when you're doing that training, the instructor, like I said, who sits in the back, has to be really experienced. We got to fly with a former Thunderbird, U.S. Air Force Thunderbird pilot was our instructor. And let me tell you, he was one of the best instructors we've ever had.
What kind of plane do you fly? What is it?
Okay, so this is an L-39 Albatross. It is a Czechoslovakian-made plane, and it's a military jet used to train pilots to become fighter pilots eventually. I also fly a couple of other jets, a Citation Latitude, Citation 500, and then smaller planes like Twin Comanche and single-engine planes, and seaplanes. I can fly planes that land on the water. Oh, I wish. No, I have never landed on an aircraft carrier, but that would be amazing.
Do you know how to fly more than 10 planes?
I know how to fly multiple planes, yes. So when you get your private pilot's license, you can fly mostly any small piston, single engine aircraft that is a land airplane that doesn't go on the water. And then from there, as you start building up your ratings, you can fly different aircraft. So for me, I currently hold 4 different type ratings in 4 different kinds of jets, and then can fly a seaplane as well, or an amphib, or a float plane, and then any kind of small multi-engine or single-engine plane.
Do you ever get scared when flying?
Oh, someone asked me this the other day as well. 99.9% of the time, no, because you train for the worst to happen, and so you likely have seen it already in training, some of these worst case scenarios, so you go to your instincts and also your training of what would I do in this situation if this happens. Now, of course, we're humans, and so if something really severe happens, yeah, I can get you a little bit concerned. But you go back to your training and you make sure that you do the right thing. So if there is an emergency or any sort of situation, what I've learned is that you maintain aircraft control, you assess the situation, take a minute to do that, and then you take the proper action to get safely down or to remedy the situation.
Thank you. That's it. That's your help.
Hello, I'm Alina, and today we're talking about female aviators. In my opinion, the women who took part in aviation aren't talked about enough. When I say female pilot, your first thought is probably Amelia Earhart, right? Well, Amelia isn't the only female aviator worth recognition, nor is she even the first woman to fly. Jessica Raish flew before her. She and her husband built the right type of biplane in their living room and then assembled it in their yard. The Reishes constructed their plane from bamboo and silk instead of a heavier canvas covering used by the Wright brothers. On September 16, 1910, in her homemade plane at Hempstead Plains, New York, Raish made the first solo airplane flight by a woman in the United States to be accredited by the Aeronautical Society of America. Amelia Earhart did not fly until 1927. Another example is Jacqueline Cochran, who was an American pilot and business executive. She pioneered women's aviation as one of the most prominent racing pilots of her generation. She set numerous records and was the first woman to break the sound barrier on May 18, 1953. Cochran, along with Nancy Love, was the wartime head of the Women Air Force Service Pilots 1943 through 1944, which employed about 1,000 civilian American women in a non-combat role to ferry planes from factories to port cities. Cochran was later a sponsor of the Mercury 13 Women astronaut program. Next, Raymond de La Roche. She became the world's first licensed female pilot on March 8, 1910. She received the 36th aeroplane pilot's license issued by the Aero Club de France, the world's first organization to issue pilot licenses. At the time, pilot licenses were only required for pilots operating aircraft for commercial purposes. The last woman I am going to be mentioning is Amy Johnson, who was a pioneering English pilot and the first woman to fly solo from London to Australia. Flying solo, or with her husband Jim Mollison, she set many long-distance records during the 1930s. She flew in the Second World War as part of the Air Transport Auxiliary and disappeared during a ferry flight. The cause of her death has been a subject of discussion over many years. Amy Johnson achieved worldwide recognition when, in 1930, she became the first woman to fly solo from England to Australia. Flying GAAH Jason, she left Croydon Airport, Surrey, on the 5th of May and landed at Darwin, Northern Territory on May 24th, 11,000 miles, 18,000 kilometers later. 6 days later, she damaged her aircraft while landing downwind at Brisbane Airport and flew to Sydney with Captain Frank Follett while her plane was repaired. Jason was later flown to Moscow to Sydney by Captain Lester Brain. Jason is now on permanent display in the Flight Gallery of the Science Museum in London. She received the Harmon Trophy as well as the CBE and George V.'s 1930 birthday honors in recognition of this achievement, and was also honored with the number 1 civil pilot's license under Australia's 1921 air navigation regulations. Johnson next obtained a de Havilland DH-80 Portsmouth GAAZV, which she named Jason II. In July 1931, she and co-pilot Jack Humphreys became the first people to fly from London to Moscow in one day, completing the 1,760-mile, 2,830-kilometer journey in approximately 21 hours. From there, they continued across Siberia and on to Tokyo, setting a record time for Britain to Japan. These are not the only female aviators worth recognition, however, these are the only ones I have time for today. Thank you for listening.